Good evening and welcome. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will not declare a national emergency just yet in order to get funding he needs for a $5.7 billion US border wall with Mexico. The partial government shutdown has entered its 22nd day, making it the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Alan Booknear reports.
Trump has repeatedly called the situation at the U.S.-Mexican border a humanitarian crisis, as speculation increases that he would circumvent Congress to build his signature wall. But yesterday he tamped down those expectations.
Now the easy solution is for me to call a national emergency. I could do that very quickly. I have the absolute right to do it, but I'm not going to do it so fast because this is something Congress should do, and we're waiting for the Democrats to vote.
Meanwhile, the Senate and House voted to give federal workers back pay whenever the shutdown ends. It was signed by Democrat House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has been pushing back at Trump's request for border wall funding.
It should not be necessary. We shouldn't have a shutdown, but since we do, we want to ensure that our public employees, some of them are working without pay, some of them are shut out from working, but all of them will be assured that they will be paid.
Some 800,000 federal employees are affected as the shutdown enters its fourth week.
It's a lot on everybody, and everybody's just trying to hang in there, and hopefully there's some resolution to this shutdown soon, because if it goes on for months, I mean, I can only imagine what's going to happen to morale, because it's already the lowest I've ever seen it.
Should Trump declare a national emergency, it will almost certainly be challenged in court.
There's no evidence that what is occurring on the border rises to the level of national emergency. We're at historically low numbers of immigrants coming across. The current circumstances indicate that a declaration of national emergency just to fund the border wall, which he cannot get the Congress to, and has not been able to get the Congress to approve, would be a abuse of the spirit of the National Emergencies Act.
Some of Trump's fellow Republicans are also warning against a disaster declaration, saying it would undercut Congress's power under the Constitution to control government spending. Alan Booknear, TVB News.
In Beijing, the Foreign Ministry has issued a statement saying it is paying close attention to the arrest of a Chinese national in Poland. Wang Weijing works for telecommunications firm Huawei and was arrested by Polish counterintelligence officers on charges of spying. Peter Koveas tells us more.
The arrest of Wang Weijing in Poland will not help Huawei's brand overseas. The company makes smartphones and other consumer devices and provides parts to service mobile networks. But several countries, including the US, Australia, and Japan, have voiced concerns about Huawei technologies used in 5G mobile networks. They fear the equipment could be a security risk. No evidence has been produced to justify the allegations, and the firm has publicly denied those claims. A Polish security services spokesman says the Chinese citizen was legally living and working in Poland, and the investigation has to do with his individual actions and not for the company he works for. Wang Weijing was arrested with a former Polish security agent who's being identified as Piotr D. The spokesman says they will be detained for 3 months. If convicted, they face about 10 years in prison. Wang Weijing was a former envoy in Poland and has been a representative for Huawei in the country since 2011. The Polish security agent previously held several top government cybersecurity positions and recently worked for Orange Polska, Poland's leading communications provider. Authorities searched the offices of Huawei and Orange, seizing documents and electronic data. The homes of both men were also searched. Wang Weijing is also the latest high-profile arrest on foreign soil for Huawei. Late last year, executive Meng Wanzhou was detained in Canada at the behest of the U.S. Washington claimed she had business dealings with Tehran, which violated American sanctions against Iran. Peter Koveas, TVB News.
A diplomatic spat between China and Canada has turned into a war of words. It comes after a few high-profile arrests. Beijing says Canada has a double standard when it comes to the rule of law. The countries disagree over the detention of each other's citizens. 2 Canadians were detained for vague national security allegations after the arrest of China's Meng Wanzhou at the request of the U.S. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau claims Beijing arrested its citizen randomly and is not respecting the diplomatic immunity of one of the men detained.
It is unfortunate that China has arbitrarily and unfairly detained 2 Canadian citizens, and indeed, in one of the cases, is not respecting the principles of diplomatic immunity. This is something that we are engaged right now, both with Chinese officials and with our partners around the world, where there is a concern for the need for all countries to do like Canada and respect the rule of law and the independence of our judicial processes.
In the Canadian capital of Ottawa, 3 people died after a double-decker bus slammed into a transit station. Emergency crews rushed to the scene just before 4 in the afternoon. About 24 people were injured and several remain in critical condition. Initial reports say the bus jumped the curb and plowed into commuters waiting on the platform. The roof of a bus shelter carved deep into the vehicle's upper deck. The bus driver has been arrested and is being questioned.
And back locally, police are investigating an arson at Mongkok MTR station. Authorities believe some newspapers were set alight on the floor of the station concourse this morning. No one was injured. Christy Leung with the details.
This cleaner said the fire lasted about 2 minutes and was put out before firefighters arrived. The MTR Corporation said at around 9:50 a.m. its station fire alarm was activated. A cleaner working nearby alerted the station staff, who then called the police. An MTR staff member later put out the fire with an extinguisher. Fire officials believe some newspapers were deliberately set alight in the incident. Firefighters used special equipment and brought in fire investigation dogs to look into the cause of the blaze. Police officers collected ashes from the burn mark for further analysis. For the first time, the police force deployed its railway response team in an actual operation. Part of the passageway near Exit E of the MTR station was closed off as police officers carried out their investigation. It was reopened at around 1 p.m. The MTR Corporation said train operations were not affected and station staff would stay vigilant. Christy Leung, TVB News.
The police have made multiple arrests in a series of anti-triad operations. The police action was in response to a series of crimes committed in East Kowloon between September last year and last week. The crimes include 3 wounding cases, possession of offensive weapons, and 2 criminal damage cases. Police arrested 35 people, including the suspected mastermind. Officers also raided more than 1,400 entertainment establishments and arrested around 300 people.
An executive council member agrees with the government's decision to raise the eligible age for the Elderly Comprehensive Social Security Assistance Scheme. However, Lam Ching Choi says job opportunities for senior citizens must be created at the same time. Kena Chu has more.
More than 60 protesters from the group CSSA Rights Defense petitioned the chief executive's office today. This as the government announced that starting next month, the age requirement for the Elderly Comprehensive Social Security Assistance Scheme will be raised from 60 to 65. Protesters criticized that the decision was made without consulting the public and urged the city's leader to overturn it. This morning, the social welfare sector also made the same request during a budget consultation session. Financial Secretary Paul Chan and Secretary for Labor and Welfare Lau Chi-kwong were both present but did not respond to the request. Regarding suggestions to assist affected elderlies using the Community Care Fund, lawmaker Xiu Ka-chun said that would breach the fund's original intended purpose. Meanwhile, the pro-establishment camp, which also disagrees with the new age limit, was invited by its pro-democracy counterpart to pressurize the government by opposing the upcoming budget. Starry Lee, chairman of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment of Hong Kong, says she will not express opposition casually before the budget is made public. Lam Ching Choi, an executive council member and chairman of the Elderly Commission, said while it is possible for the labor force to hold out until age 65, measures facilitating elderly employment is necessary. He noted that should the government agree, the Elderly Commission is willing to discuss with stakeholders how to work out the new arrangement. Kana Chu, TVB News.
A Beijing official announced that the outline for the Greater Bay Area Development Plan is now complete. The announcement was made by the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Zhang Xiaoming, on state media CCTV. He stressed that the two SARs of Hong Kong and Macau, as well as Shenzhen and Guangzhou, will have the key roles of central cities. He also said the institutional differences between mainland and the two SARs will be part of the features and advantages of the Greater Bay Area.
Welcome back to TVB News. The government is considering banning some people from owning a dog or a cat. Animal rights activists are calling for tough measures against those who abuse their pets. Caleb Leung has more.
These dogs appear to be having fun and enjoying the attention, but they all have a history of being abandoned and some are even abused. They are now living at this temporary shelter in Yuen Long, which houses around 70 dogs and a dozen cats. Ivy, the person in charge of this rescue, is holding a dog which had its vocal cords removed for barking too loud. She can't understand why anyone would harm these animals. The government is planning to amend laws on animal protection. The laws may prohibit abusers from temporarily owning another pet. But Ivy said the law should include lifelong bans. She believes some offenders have no remorse for what they have done and could easily abuse their pets again. Lawmaker Roy Kwong thinks the court should have the final say, but agrees lifelong bans may be necessary. Sources said the government will likely conduct a public consultation in the first quarter of 2019. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Jailed former Chief Executive Donald Tsang has been admitted to hospital after he claimed he was feeling unwell. That's 3 days before his jail term at Stanley Prison is set to end. Cardinal Joseph San, Bishop Emeritus of Hong Kong, visited Tsang at Queen Mary Hospital's custodial ward this morning. On departure, the Cardinal noted Tsang was in good mental condition. The former CE is still serving his sentence after being found guilty of misconduct in public office. In July, the Court of Appeal rejected Tsang's appeal against his conviction, but reduced his sentence from 20 months behind bars to 12. Last month, he was granted leave to appeal to the highest court, and a hearing has been set for May.
The government is being urged to relax restrictions on electric vehicle subsidies for the transport sector and goods vehicles. Auto industry representatives claim not enough is being done to get more electric cars on our roads. Haley Joe has more.
Auto industry representatives want more support from the government for electric vehicles. As of May 2017, about 1.3% of registered vehicles were electric cars. That's quite far from the 30% suggested by a government planning paper in 2011 to be achieved by next year. Yet the government has no set e-car targets.
In many countries, diesel vehicles are already been restricted and in a specific timing schedule, but Hong Kong hasn't. There's nothing more important to keep up with the international community.
In last year's budget speech, the Financial Secretary announced a one-for-one swap scheme where an electric car buyer must scrap another car that's at least 6 years old to get a $250,000 tax break. The association surveyed some 230 people online. About one-third cited high prices as their biggest obstacle to buying electric cars. On top of more tax breaks, the association also urged the government to reduce restrictions in the Pilot Green Transport Fund. It is a $300 million fund formed by the government to subsidize the testing of clean energy vehicles by transport services and franchised bus companies. They suggested to reduce its trial period from the current 2 years to 1 year. Also, it's suggested to expedite its vetting procedure, which currently takes at least 6 months. They also stress boosting the number of electric vehicles will not only make the city cleaner but also quieter, saying less noise pollution will benefit all members of the public on top of health benefits. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Overseas again, an 18-year-old Saudi runaway who said she feared for her life if she was deported back home has been granted asylum by Canada. Rahaf Mohammed Al Kunun tweeted pictures from her plane seat holding her passport and watching the airplane TV. It caps a dramatic week that saw her flee her family while visiting Kuwait and flying to Bangkok. She barricaded herself in an airport transit hotel to avoid deportation and mounted a social media campaign that drew global attention. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canada would accept her as a refugee.
Our diplomats in Thailand have been engaged with our partners and allies, particularly with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. The UNHCR has made a request of Canada that we accept Ms. Al Kunun as a refugee, and we have accepted the UN's request that we grant her asylum. That is something that we are pleased to do because Canada is a country that understands how important it is to stand up for human rights, to stand up for women's rights around the world.
Syrian state media say Israeli warplanes fired a number of missiles towards the Damascus area. It says Syrian air defenses intercepted most of them, but one missile struck a warehouse at Damascus airport. Israel has mounted attacks in Syria as part of its effort to counter the influence being carved out by Iran, which supports the government of President Bashar al-Assad. The last Israeli attack reported by Syrian state media was on December 25th. It wounded 3 Syrian soldiers. Macedonia's parliament has passed an amendment to its constitution to rename the country the Republic of Northern Macedonia. It's in line with an agreement with Greece to put an end to the 27-year-old dispute. Greece blocked its neighbors' aspirations to EU and NATO memberships. Athens says the name Macedonia implies territorial claims to a Greek province of the same name. The country struck the deal in June, but Macedonia will only start using its new name after the Greek parliament ratifies the agreement. Outside, several hundred people protested, saying that changing the name of the country and national symbols is too high a price to pay for NATO and EU accession.
The runner-up in the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential election says he is the true winner. Speaking in front of his many supporters, Martin Fayulu claimed he got 60% of the ballots and will file a formal fraud complaint. Fayulu accuses outgoing President Joseph Kabila of making a backroom deal to help Felix Tshisekedi win the election. The country's electoral commission said Tshisekedi won with 38% of the vote and Fayulu earned 34%. The influential Catholic Church said it had different results, with Fayulu garnering more than 60% of the ballots. The vote was supposed to be Congo's first democratic transfer of power in 6 decades, but instead threatens to reawake violence in the country. And that's the news.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good weekend.